Welcome to D. Holloway's Midlife Takeover, where it's never too late to pursue life on your own terms and your own time because you absolutely deserve it. All right, so let's get into this. So I've been watching videos on YouTube on the whole buy versus rent debate. Should you be a renter or should you own your own home? And there are a lot of people who are pro rent, and they are just like definitive in their belief that buying a home is a terrible financial decision, that your home is not an asset, that it's stupid to buy a home. It is better to rent. Now, I'm not saying that being a renter is a bad thing in all cases. I'm just saying that from where I sit, I believe that home ownership is a better thing. And before I get into the details on that, I just want to preface this with, if you are a person who you don't have an emergency fund, you have high interest credit card debt or any other high interest debt, and you don't have a adequate down payment, or you need closing cost assistance just to be able to afford the house, and you know that you're not going to be in the house for more than 5 years, then you have work to do. You probably are going to be better off as a renter. I would suggest that you be a renter before you get into this home ownership game. So that's just my advice. Now, I was a renter up until the age of 35. Now, that wasn't because I was like, oh man, it's better off to be a renter than being a homeowner. No, I wasn't even thinking about buying a home. My mind wasn't even wrapped around that. I just simply didn't have any kids, a single dude. I was moving around, with work. So I just didn't buy a home. Didn't even think about the financial benefits of it. But ever since 35, I've been a homeowner, and I've also been a landlord. So I kind of view this thing from several different lenses, and I want to kind of get into that in terms of why I believe that it is still better to be a homeowner. So the main reasons I hear people mention as benefits for being a renter versus the homeowner are the upfront costs are lower for being a renter than it is for being a homeowner, which is obvious, right? The renter doesn't have to worry about property maintenance. The renter doesn't have to worry about property taxes or insurance. They don't have to worry about the declining prices when the market is crashing. And the renter has this flexibility to move. They can simply, not renew their lease and be on their way. But if we dig a little deeper into each one of these, I still believe that being a homeowner is a better deal. So let's talk about it. Upfront costs. So I just got to concede on this one. The cost of being a renter are simply just going to be lower than that of being a homeowner. Homeowner has to come up with a down payment. They got to come up with closing costs. And the renter simply has to, in most cases, come up with the deposit, maybe a rental application or something, but we're talking probably $50, $100. And then they come up with the first month's rent. But the homeowner is going to have to come up with a much more significant amount of money to be able to get into that house. Flexibility to move. That is true. The renter has the flexibility to not renew their lease when the term is up, and they can vacate, get their stuff, going about their business, clean transaction, right? Now, on the flip side of that, the landlord has the flexibility to not renew the tenant's lease. And I'll give you an example. I put all of my tenants on a 1-year lease to begin with. And then at the end of that 1 year, that lease converts to a month-to-month lease. So if that tenant was to go sideways on me in the future, then all I got to do is just give them a notice, 30-day notice that, hey, we're not going to be renewing your lease at the end of this term, and you got to get out because you are a horrible tenant. You're not paying me my money. You're tearing up my place. You're causing problems in the neighborhood, or whatever the case may be, right? But I can give that tenant that notice, and 30 days later, they got to vacate. And this could be like a significant impact on a renter's life, because now, in the midst of living everyday life, you got to go and find a new place to live. You may have to uproot your kids from school in the middle of a school year if you can't find housing within that same school district. And it's just a big, problem that all of a sudden just gets thrown in your life. And this myth that only the renter has the flexibility is just a myth, because the landlord has just as much flexibility. Property taxes and insurance. This belief that renters do not pay property taxes and insurance is a lie. They may not pay the property taxes and the insurance directly to the county or to the insurance company, but I promise you, they are paying the property taxes and insurance. I do not own a property where the rent does not cover the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance, and much more. Don't own one property that doesn't cover that. Now, maybe that may happen in some of the, higher priced areas. I don't know. But I have not run into a landlord who said, "Hey man, I'm only getting rent that covers my principal and interest. It doesn't cover my taxes and insurance. I have to cover that out of pocket." So let's just ditch that whole myth, that whole belief that renters are not paying property taxes and insurance. Maintenance responsibilities. So another myth that's out there, that renters don't pay for maintenance and upkeep of the property. I do not own a property where the rent does not cover the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance, and the maintenance of the property, and the capital expenses like a new roof or a new HVAC or a new fence. It is all factored into the rent, and the renter is paying that rent. I'm taking that money, setting it to the side so that I can pay for those maintenance expenses when they pop up, or those CapEx expenses when they pop up. So again, this myth that the renter is not paying for those things, it's just a myth. So I just want to illustrate my point a little further by showing you guys 8 of the properties that I own and track together. This data is from calendar year 2020 through calendar year 2023. So you can see the 8 properties listed here. And with the exception of this property on Sydney Drive, which could have been a property, I believe, that we had just brought online during that time, that we just purchased rather, and converted to a rental. That property has a negative, net income, right? So we didn't make any money on that over the course of the 3-year period. But again, that could have been because of we had just acquired the property and was bringing it online. But other than that, you can see the other 7 properties all had a net positive income over the 3 years, right? And you can see when you total it all up over the course of this period from calendar year 2020 to 2023, renters paid $522,000 in rent, and as you can see highlighted, insurance, I paid $40,000 over the 3-year period. I paid $119,000 in interest expense. Paid $29,000 in property management. Don't get on me about that. I just don't like, managing the properties because it's a headache factor, and I'd rather go try and make some more money doing something else. So that just is what it is. All right. So with property taxes over the course of this period, paid $151,000 in taxes. Yes, property taxes in Texas are out of this world. And in terms of repairs and maintenance during this period, paid $76,000. And that gave me a total expenses of $423,000. So you take the $522,000 in income, and that left me after the 3-year period, over the 3-year period, $100,000 roughly of net positive income. So these tenants paid everything. They paid the insurance, they paid the interest, they paid the property management, they paid the property taxes, and they paid for the maintenance and repairs. So again, this myth that they don't pay these things and that somehow being a renter, you're going to get off from paying these items, it's just a myth, just a lie. Now, if I lived in an area where every run-of-the-mill house was $1 million and higher, like coastal California, Hawaii, New York, Miami, Chicago, and so forth, then I probably would be looking at being a renter too, because I don't know if the homeowners are going to be able to consistently get the amount of their mortgage in rent. I don't know if they're going to hit the entire property taxes, insurance, interest, and principal amount in the form of rent. So for a renter, it might be better for you to come in and just rent the place for slightly less than what the homeowner is paying for it, or equal to what the homeowner is paying for it. And then you just avoid all of those upfront costs of buying the home, the closing costs, and, being tied down to that house. It just might be a better deal to just rent if you're in one of those type of markets. So we haven't even talked about all of the benefits that the homeowner gets that the renter doesn't get, like the principal pay down from making the monthly mortgage payment every month, and also the appreciation. Again, we talked about earlier that the renter doesn't have to worry about like the decline in market, but they get no benefit in the upside either, because we all know that for most areas, homes are just getting more expensive. They're not getting cheaper. The prices are not falling. So the homeowner is going to be benefiting from this appreciation and becoming wealthier, whereas the renter is just making that rent payment. And let's not forget about the equity, because as the principal is being paid down and as the home appreciates, so now you got house value going up, amount that's owed on the home going down, and it's creating this equity that is making the homeowner richer. And again, the renter is not benefiting in any of that. Another thing that the renter is missing out on is the opportunity to invest. So let me explain that to you. So the renter is paying a premium on the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance payment that I owe to the bank, right? So let's say, for example, my payment to the bank might be $500. My rent that I'm getting from the tenant, it's like $1,300, for example. And that's a very common scenario on those properties I just showed you. So that tenant is paying far more in rent. And that money, right, is an opportunity that if they owned the home, not only would they have enough to cover all of those other expenses that I showed you in that spreadsheet, they would have a certain amount left over, hopefully, that they could go and invest that amount versus paying it to me, because I invested, I spend it, I bought a car with it, I've helped send my daughter to college with it. So they're definitely paying me a premium that I'm getting the opportunity to use in my life, whereas they're not, getting the opportunity to use it. So I was looking at an article that was talking about some statistics from like 2022, and it talked about the difference in net worth for homeowners and renters, right? And it said that homeowners had a median net worth of about $390,000, whereas renters had a net worth of about $10,000. That is a huge difference. And I'm not saying that just because you buy a house that you're going to automatically have some sort of significant net worth or anything like that. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if the characteristics of a homeowner say that you're more likely to have a higher net worth by a significant margin, then it makes more sense to me to want to be a homeowner and be in that category versus being a renter. So that's my mini case for being the homeowner versus being a renter. I know at the end of the day, we all got to do what we got to do. But I think the funny thing is for me is that a lot of the people that I have seen on YouTube who are pro rent and they just so definitive about it are kind of some of your more famous people on YouTube. And these guys are rich. So this whole dilemma of should you be a homeowner or should you be a renter is not even like an issue that they got to deal with in their day-to-day life, because they could easily go drop a few $1 million on a house and own it if they want to, for whatever reason they choose to rent, which is fine. But it's not like it's a financial decision that they're making, that, oh, I got to save a few dollars by renting. No, they could easily just go drop a couple $1 million on a house and call it a day. That's all I have for you today. If you have a different perspective on anything that I've said, feel free to drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But in the meantime, take care of yourself and be safe out here in these social media streets.